Hey, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast, Identity and Influence Edition, where we focus on simplifying the complexities of your leadership journey. I'm Mo, and today I'm back with my good buddy, Dr. Lem Usita. What's up, man?
Dr. Mo, always great to see you. Always great to spend time talking through leadership, and I'm really looking forward to having this conversation. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, I don't know how excited I am about this one. I read it and I was convicted, man. I'm not going to lie. And it's about the energy that we give and get as leaders. So let's jump right into it. Before I get to my questions, give me the quick elevator 30-second. What is the name
Yeah.
of this leadership lesson and what's it about?
Man, I am also, just like you, convicted about this. That's part of the reason why I wrote it. These are the lessons that I'm learning. And this particular lesson comes out of some thoughts about things that drain your energy and things that give your energy. And I just wanted to take a look at our leadership practice and what are the things that drain our energy and what are the things that give us life. And so this is what I came up with. It was a tough one to work through myself.
Yeah, let's get right to it, man. You talk about reactive leadership all the time. And when you do, you speak of it as living in response instead of design. So, how do leaders unintentionally slide into this mode?
There are times in leadership where you need to react and manage something in leadership. Things just happen sometimes out of your control, and you'll just have to manage the situation. So it's unavoidable to jump into reactive leadership at times. I think the point of reactive leadership is when it's your main mode of leading, then you run into some problems. It's okay to move into it every now and then, but if you're constantly in reactive leadership, then there's a flaw in the design of leadership. There's a flaw in your culture. There's a flaw in your organization. So reactive leadership actually gives you a picture of the things that you need to work on as a leader. So it might be yourself, your organization, or your leadership culture.
Yeah. So, if it's not just about poor time management, but really about failure of leadership architecture, what are leaders actually surrendering when they stay in the reactive mode?
Yeah, again, it's not to say that reactive leadership is bad. And I was thinking through this, maybe in some sectors, reactive leadership is what's needed in order for the organizations to thrive. And so, I mean, I can't think of many examples, but I think there are parts of the military that like it's reactive, like things are happening in the world and it's just a reactive type of posture in order to deal with things. And I can think of several industries that need to be reactive in order for it to thrive. But when it's constantly in reactive leadership, it's going to burn out leaders. So I think understanding this idea and what it'll do to your leadership and your team is key. And again, we're not saying that reactive leadership is bad. In some cases, it's needed. But what you surrender in reactive leadership is control. What you surrender is rest. What you surrender is a proactive posture in leadership. And if you're constantly reacting, like we always say in this podcast, then you're managing. And if you're managing, then you're not leading.
Yeah, I'm telling you, when we live in that reactive state, it just really kills us because we can't focus on anything. And the best leaders that I know, the men and women who have spoken into my life, have always said, Mo, you've got to own your time. You have to own everything that you
Yeah.
do and be so
Yeah.
rigid. You always start the premise with no. Hey, Mo, can you do that? No. And then make people tell you why it's important that you do whatever you do. Otherwise, you're just reacting to a ton of stuff going on. I've been in that mode a ton and I've
Yeah.
definitely give an end to that. And so when I was reading through the article, I thought, and that is totally what I've gone through. Now, it's been less over the years, but it made me think when leaders live in the response mode long term, what
Yeah.
happens to clarity, judgment, strategic capacity? All those things have to be affected, right?
Yeah. I think we reward busyness these days. So the ability to respond looks good as a leader. And so like responsive leadership and reactive leadership can look good in organizations where busyness is rewarded, but it's just not sustainable. It'll catch up to you. And when you're in constant response mode, I think you lack clarity. I think you lack judgment. You definitely lack strategic capacity because you're just managing the situation. I think strategic capacity creates a proactive stance, not a reactive one. And somehow you'll need to break out of that in order to be proactive, in order to create an environment where you're leading and not responding.
Yeah. Want to talk about one of the energy drains that you mentioned, which is unresolved people dynamics. You talk about leaders becoming the emotional shock absorber for their organization. What does that look like in everyday leadership situations?
So, when your organization lacks the structure and clarity for productivity, many times the leader becomes a shock absorber for relationships in the organization. Relationships and human interactions that aren't going well take a lot of energy away from the leader. So, if you're needing to navigate relationships, you got the wrong people on the bus, or you're spending time managing relationship and people's emotions over leading the organization. What it looks like in everyday leadership situations is you're managing, you're not leading if you're having to take care of relationships. And if you're the emotional shock absorber for the organization, you're expending energy doing that and not leading the organization.
Yeah. When you make the claim that avoidance often masquerades as kindness, what do leaders confuse in compassion versus fear?
When you're avoiding a conversation or relationship with a team member, that's energy that you're spending on a relationship. And avoiding that interaction expends more energy and creates strain in you as the leader. So someone's in the wrong seat on the bus, using Jim Collins' idea. And if it's not the team member that's in the wrong seat of the bus, then it's you as the leader that's in the wrong seat.
Man, so true. So when leaders choose clarity over comfort, what changes in the emotional load they carry as a leader?
When you choose clarity over comfort, then the emotional drain is temporary, right? It's not a constant drain. It's not a constant dynamic that you need to manage. It might be uncomfortable in the moment when you're addressing it, but then when you create clarity, your leadership and your team member, clarity over comfort might create an emotional drain that's temporary, but once you have clarity, then you're moving freely as a leader.
Yeah. And so I want to talk about one more energy drain, and that's the identity and security. You're the identity specialist. This is what you build your entire platform on. And when you frame this drain as performing leadership instead of embodying it, how can leaders recognize when they've crossed into the realm of performance?
Yeah, this is a tough one to answer because if you could recognize it in yourself, you probably could make that change. And I think this is a situation where a coach or a mentor can help you. I think developing some reflective practices to think back on your leadership helps you to see this dynamic. But if you're in a situation where you can see it and you're not doing anything about it, then just like the last thing we were saying, you're avoiding a conversation or a relationship. But I think ultimately we need people to help us with this. I think there's some personalities that can easily do this. I think a D style would not have a problem calling people out. I think a C style would also not have a problem calling people out. But I think the I style, this is more the I style dynamic and maybe an S style. What are your thoughts on that?
One of the things that I remember is that the higher you get in leadership, the further you get away from reality. Brad Paisley says in one of his songs, when you're a celebrity, it's adios reality. I think leadership is
Mm,
the same thing because we start we start leading and all of a sudden we get this good press or we think and then all of a sudden we start believing our own press. Everybody wants to hear good stuff, right? So, all of a sudden you have yes men and yes women around you, and they're like, "Yeah, you're doing a great job."
yeah,
And
yeah.
you need somebody to bring you back down to reality. And so, the way that I've always stepped away and gotten away from performing leadership is making sure that I have men and women in my life who say, "Mo, let's talk about the real stuff." And when I do that as a D style in the disc assessment, that really helps me. It's very humbling, but it helps me. And so, for those of you out there, whether you're a D style, an I style, an S style, or a C style, and if you don't know what that means, take the disc assessment. We give it,
Yep.
it's worth it. You need to do it. But once you do that and you learn what it takes for you to stay out of the performance realm, and don't get me wrong, Doc, everybody can perform. I's love
Right.
performing because they're the life of the party. But even an S
100%.
style who's subdued can perform because they do whatever they have to do to be left alone. And then the C style, the way they perform is they act like they have all the statistics when they really don't. So we're all performing and we all need to get away from that. So my question for our leaders is Who's pulling you down from keeping your head in the clouds? So, a couple more questions. You point to approval seeking and over explaining as signals of insecurity. So why do those behaviors drain energy so quickly?
If you're constantly approving, approval seeking, and over explaining, that constant self monitoring is cognitively and emotionally expensive. It drains you. This type of leadership is self protecting. And I found myself caught in this trap. So that's part of the reason why I'm sharing this. But the performance of leadership expends so much energy because you're so focused on you that you're not leading the organization.
So if you find
Yeah.
yourself doing what Dr. Lem's saying, it's time to check yourself and really reevaluate and say, why am I doing that? My last question would be, you recommend anchoring leadership in a personal credo. And so how do you do that for one? And how does leading from identity restore both confidence and authority?
When you lead from identity, you are clear on what's your responsibility as a leader and what you need to let go of. It also points to building a leadership culture that supports your leadership and your personality and your identity so that you lead out of identity and clarity rather than insecurity. And it takes time. I think developing a personal mission statement or personal credo just takes some time reflecting. It also involves knowing your identity, knowing your disc style, and then building your leadership environment around your personality in a way that you can be effective, in a way that you can be proactive about leadership. And so write down your vision statement for yourself, take a look at your values, and just come back to it and make sure you're living out of your mission, vision, and values. Having that clarity and identity really helps you in leadership.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've done this myself, and you and I have talked about mission statements and vision and credos, and they all are intertwined. But I'd just like to share with the audience just a piece of my personal credo, which is to lead from who you are and not your
Mhm.
title. When I learned that, and when I put that as part of my personal credo, it really changed the way that I talked with people within my organization, outside of my organization, laterally, those people that I owe things to, either up or down. And so if you do not have a personal credo, again, and you need help and you're thinking, I don't even know where to start with that, we would love to help you with that. Dr. Lim, before we go, is there anything else that we might have missed or that you wanted to drive home?
When I wrote this, I just took a look at my experience and what I saw as energy drains. And you are different. You have a different personality and dynamic. And so these aren't the only three energy drains. You need to figure out for yourself what drains your energy, what gives you energy.
Man, love it, brother.
Yes,
For the
sir.
audience, if today's episode sharpened the personal saw in your life and how you think about leadership, make sure you head over to rtclc.com and sign up for our newsletter. It's free. We give you the good stuff. Like, subscribe, share to this podcast. Dr. Lem, thanks so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.